Hello and welcome back to my channel where I like to have fun with all things beauty while being critical about what I accept into my collection. Today I am reviewing the Agate Temptation palette. So that is this beauty right here, and I have probably my favorite look from the palette on my eyes today, which is mostly green and yellow and features this duochrome right here. That's definitely my favorite shade in the palette. I knew that going into it. I knew that was going to be my favorite shade, but it really is beautiful, and I'll definitely show that off in the swatches coming up. The thing that makes reviewing this palette different from the other palettes in my collection is the fact that this is a small indie brand by G.L.I.T.S. So most people who are doing reviews on YouTube are going to be some amount of bias about this palette as a result of knowing her either directly from watching her channel or from a third party, somebody else talking about her. And I feel like even if you don't have an opinion of her one way or the other, you know that it's a very, very small indie brand. And personally, that just makes me not want to criticize it as hard. I don't just feel that way about Singe Beauty. I feel like that about other indie brands as well, but I feel like Singe might be the smallest indie brand, or if not the smallest, the one that I know the most about the owner. Just from watching her throughout the years, I have a lot of respect for her artistry. I know running your own business is difficult, and I want them to do well. So I have to definitely take into account the fact that I want to like this palette. Not that I ever purchase things or spend my money on things that I don't want to like, but it is possible that I might want to like this more than some other things in my collection. So I just have to be upfront about that. You know, like as humans, we're all biased. We all are born with biases as a result of our own life experiences. So that's never not part of a review. That's never not the case. But I do think it's worth mentioning since you're probably going to see a lot of reviews about this palette that are possibly slightly more excited about this than they would otherwise be. So with that out of the way, I'm going to do my best to not let that cloud my judgment too much and speak about this in a way that is most helpful if you are thinking about purchasing this. I do think that it is priced very fairly in the scheme of things, $45. That's not including shipping. So for me, it was closer to $55, but that's not terrible for 16 shades, including multi-chromes. Packaging is very beautiful. It contains a nice big mirror and a magnetic closure. It's also the same exact size as the first one, so they stack nicely. I know I always appreciate that, so I thought I would mention that also. Before talking more in depth about the formula and how I personally feel about this color story, I am going to jump into swatches. I do multiple lighting situations, so hopefully that will be helpful. I always do 2 swipes, and that is on my bare arm with no primer, no moisturizer, nothing down. My coloring is light medium. I would say my arm is probably light. My face is a little darker than my inner arm, and I am mostly neutral, ever so slightly cool leaning. That might be more useful when I go into the different eye looks that I've done so far, but I will do that after I talk about the formula. So right now we're going to cut to the swatches. I hope that was helpful. Now what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to compare it to the Odin's Eye because so many people talked about, I think it was one of the Christmas palettes that it was actually most similar to, but it's also been compared to the collab that Angelica did with Odin's Eye for Halloween, which I do have, and that is the Trick or Treat palette. I'm going to show those swatches with the Agate Temptation on top and this one on the bottom. And I should say too, when I did these swatches, I just did these today. The mint and the neon green look a little odd, but that is because I had some wetness on my fingers before I did the swatches. So if they look a little funky, that's why. As soon as I realized that, I dried my hands off and I made sure that it didn't continue, but I didn't really have time to redo everything. So I just wanted to mention that really quick. So first I'm going to compare it to Trick or Treat. And then, just because, I'm going to compare it to the first palette, Galactic Visitor. It is not at all similar to this. As you can see, they're night and day in terms of the color story, but I wanted to just put them next to shades that were even remotely similar for myself too, just to remind myself of the formula of this. So those will come right after the swatches with Trick or Treat. After doing these swatches, I walked away feeling like they weren't very similar at all. So instead, I focused on looking at the most similar shades in both palettes and doing a side-by-side eye look to see how they compare when they're actually on the eyes. Because the similar shades are in the better Odin's Eye formula, I think they held up pretty well side by side. And I think you would have a hard time distinguishing the two if you didn't know. I still think the Singe performs better. The shimmer is nicer, it's thinner, and it's more impactful. But at the end of the day, can you tell the difference? No. That being said, this was the only eye look that I was really able to do a duplicate of, meaning that the two palettes are actually less similar than they originally appear to be, in my opinion. All right, so I hope that was useful, and now I'm going to talk about the formula. First, right off the bat, so much better than Odin's Eye. I am not a fan of the Odin's Eye formula in general. Once in a while they work out fine, but especially in this palette, I over time find some of these completely unusable. So no comparison there, Singe is much better. I would even say that the new palette is better than their original. The first palette, Galactic Visitor, the differences are subtle. I mean, they're not wildly different by any means, but ever so slightly, I do think that the mattes blend more easily and the shimmers are creamier while still being thin and impactful. Also, aside from the formula, I just like the new color story so much better than this. When I looked at this palette, I had a difficult time coming up with looks that I wanted to repeat. I definitely made it work, but it just wasn't my favorite. So once I used this a whole bunch initially, I kind of forgot about it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not mad that I bought it because I wanted to try the formula and I wanted to see if it could push me outside of the box and come up with something new and interesting, and it kind of was a fail in that sense. I do pick it up from time to time, but it's definitely not something that I look forward to experimenting with compared to some of the other palettes that I have. And that just really comes down to color for me. This palette felt a lot more intuitive. I initially just looked at this and I knew immediately that this was more in my wheelhouse in terms of coming up with color combinations. Not to say that it is my perfect color story, because it really isn't. If I were to make my own palette, it would look look very different from this, but still I feel like this is fun and interesting in a way that the first one wasn't. The other thing about this that made it a worthwhile purchase was the fact that I don't have anything similar. Really, other than the Onsai, I don't have a lot of color stories like this because it's not typically something that I go for. So in that sense, it's not redundant, and these days, I mean, I have over 100 eyeshadow palettes. Like, it's really difficult for me to not be redundant, so I'm happy to have it for that reason alone. When I'm testing a palette and I'm genuinely happy to pick it up, that's always a really good sign. Time will tell the truth about how often I do choose to pick this up when I do my mid-year and end-year roundup of palettes. I will know more, but if I were to guess, this would land somewhere in the middle because there are some looks here that I am really happy and excited to wear, but the tones being what they are, I know it's not going to be my most reach for palette, and that's just because of the color story. Being mostly neutral, I'm very lucky because I feel like I can go a lot of different directions with colors and sort of get away with it. I slightly prefer cooler tones on me, but I've also done straight up red eye looks and feel like they look okay. So I have to say I am lucky in that respect. Although if I were to guess, I would say a warmer toned person might gravitate more towards this. This might be slightly more flattering on them. But all of that really comes down to preference. So I try to always talk about what my preferences are in eyeshadow in general. So when I look at a palette, I want a gradient. I contour my eyes every time I do my eyes. I do that. That's just my default setting. I like how it looks. It's what I'm comfortable with. So I'm not fighting that. I like to contour my eyes. So I like a light shade and a deep shade. I need all of my palettes to have that so I can have depth. And I think Angelica does that too. So her palettes, I'm not surprised to see that. We absolutely have a good variety there. When it comes to formula, I think this is also in the sweet spot for me in terms of the shimmers being very impactful. I'm all about shimmer. Glaminatrix is my favorite shimmer, so I like impact. But I don't like things to be too emollient. I always use this as my example, and I'm not trying to like hate on the brand, but brands like Adept that have really emollient, sometimes chunky shimmer shades, while they can be impactful and maybe have less fallout, sometimes I feel like they add texture in a way that's not flattering, or they become really creasy and actually detract from the impact. I just prefer something that is more in that middle ground. That's not too hard pressed, that you're not getting shimmer particles, but that's not too emollient, that it's just a creasy mess. And I feel like this falls into the Goldilocks zone when it comes to that shimmer formula. I'm really, really happy about that. There's some differences here. Not all of the shimmers are the same. So these two are probably the clearest example. I have crystallized on this finger and quartz on my middle finger, and I'll do a close-up so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So they're both on the thinner side, but quartz, the green, has a lot more sparkle, while crystallized has a lot more shine. So I like both. I appreciate both. I absolutely love both of these formulas. I should also say I've used every shade in this palette, so I can say with confidence that all of the mattes performed very similar. The one that I had an issue with was Plume. So this dark green in the corner right here, this felt a little dry, and as a result, it did not blend the best. I'm actually going to cut away to my eye look today, and during the end of that, you can actually see how I'm having a hard time. I put it in my outer corner, and when I went to blend it into my brow bone, it didn't blend effortlessly. And having used that shade in my outer corner multiple times now, I can say, unfortunately, it is kind of a thing. It's kind of a thing. It didn't just happen once, so it probably is the shadow. Now, it could just be my palette. Maybe it just got dried out in my palette and other people won't have an issue, but I even felt it when I swatched it. It just feels a little bit drier than the other mattes, and when I swatch it out, it's a little patchy. And that's very similar to how it went on the eye. It was just a little bit patchy. I was still able to use it, don't get me wrong. All I had to do was take my blending brush and add a little bit of the darker shade to the lighter matte that I was mixing it with, and it was fine. It's not noticeably patchy. I'll put a close-up of my eye look up right here so you can see for yourself. Not terrible, not terrible at all, not by any stretch, but it was the one shade in this entire palette that I had a little bit of a problem with. So I think that's a win. Formula-wise, I think this whole palette is an A+. But I will cut to my eye look today, and then on the other side, I'll talk about some of the other eye looks that I've done so far. All right, so in my look today, I just went with all of my favorites, which are definitely the greens. I really like this yellow, and my favorite shimmer is crystallized, I've already talked about. I also love quartz though, because it's a little bit different. Like, I have so many greens in my collection at this point, but this one almost has a blue flip. Like, it's not a duochrome, and I haven't really heard anyone else mention that, but I personally see the slightest bit of blue in the base, and I think that adds dimension, and it's just really, really pretty. So I love the quartzade. The crystallized green to peach duochrome, is it revolutionary? Absolutely not. But it's still stunning, and I don't actually have anything like that in my collection, so I'm thrilled to have that. The neon green is super fun as an inner corner pop. I really like the tone of these greens as well, and the yellow shade is kind of fun. That's a little bit different for me. The other look that I did with this that I really liked was just going full neutral, just all neutral with silica, this champagne-y shimmer in the corner here. It's a given that I would love a shade like that, but I love it in this palette as well, and I like the fact that this palette has a very neutral look in it. The shades I didn't love as much is probably this top row here and the oranges, just because I don't actually wear oranges that often. They're fun to have, and I will definitely play with them from time to time, but how often am I really going to go in that direction? Probably not that frequently. So I just have to be realistic. This top row here, it's just the tones don't feel that flattering on my skin tone. Even this mint, I really tried to make a look with that, and it was totally inoffensive and fine, but just not my favorite. So that is purely preference. And I should also say, before I get into my looks, I'm not really an artist. I try, I do my best, but I think a true artist could look at this color story and come up with crazy great combinations that I would never in a million years think of. I tend to go monochromatic a lot, and often that works out for me because it's beautiful. It turns into a beautiful look, and you don't have to think that hard about it. Once in a blue moon, I'll try a combination and it will turn out stunning. But more often than not, I will push myself to come up with a bizarre combination and it just doesn't look good. It's different for the sake of being different, but it's not actually pretty. So even though I've had palettes in my collection where I could come up with 15 different looks in one palette, and I'm like, wow, that's so versatile. But if only 2 of them are pretty, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how versatile something is if I don't have that many different looks that I want to go back for multiple times. That's the part about these reviews that come down to personal taste. So when I rank a palette in my collection, I am looking at formula probably first and foremost, because I could dupe almost any color story at this point. So formula is number 1. But number 2 is genuinely, how much do I like my favorite looks in the palette? Because whether that is 2 looks or 5 looks, sometimes if I like the 2 looks better than the other 5 looks, I'm gonna rank that palette higher. I've had people argue with me about that, but that's just how I feel. A palette's value to me is genuinely comes down to how often do I want to reach for that look? Because of course I want to have options, but I want to have my favorite looks first. So if I sit here and tell you that I have 2 favorite looks from this palette, it may not sound like a lot, but that's not bad. Some of my favorite palettes of all times have only 2 looks that I want to go back for. So I mean it when I say that that's not bad. All right, with that out of the way, I'm going to get into the looks that I've done. And quickly, a note about creativity. There's a creator named Heather who I just came across recently who took this palette, and I think one of the first looks she did with it was take this mint green and mix it with this murky swampy green and this red based brown down here, and came up with an absolutely stunning look. So stunning that I tried to recreate it, and you'll see that in the looks when I cut to that. But that's definitely a great example of you don't know until you try it. And so many people recreated that look after she did it, but I think it's a good reminder to try. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. It washes off. I mean, that's the best thing about makeup is you're not that committed to any one look. So I do appreciate being forced outside my comfort zone, playing with different combinations. Sometimes that works out better than others, but I will now show all of the looks that I've done so far right now. So I hope that was helpful. Inspiring, I don't know, but I do try my best, and I try to show makeup from somebody who has no training, who's only been playing with makeup for a little while, on hooded 41-year-old eyes, to encourage people to play around. You don't have to be a makeup artist to have fun, and I appreciate palettes like this for encouraging that. So all in all, I'm really happy to have this. If I lost it, I would definitely go out and repurchase it. I do feel like I need to continue playing with this to be able to rank it. I don't think I'm there yet. In a few more weeks, I probably will be, but at this point, I still think it's too soon. I will, in the meantime, post looks on Instagram. I don't post on Instagram every single day, but especially when I'm reviewing a palette, I do include every look. So I include the ones that don't work out, or the color combinations that I don't think are the greatest. I still post them because I think that that could be useful. So definitely follow me over there if you want to see some additional looks with this. And that is it for me today. I did get the 3 re-released Nomad palettes. I'm almost embarrassed at this point because I'm always like, Nomad is not that great, and then I buy like every single release. So I need to stop and just admit to myself that I actually like Nomad at. I don't think that their formula is anything to write home about, but I really like their color combinations. That's the reason I keep buying them, so whatever. I bought 3 more. At the discount, they were about $30 a piece, so I thought that that was a really good deal, and I had a hard time passing it up. So I'm not sure when that video will come out. I am popping in from my bathroom because it's the only quiet place in my house where I can film anything right now. And I was editing, and the outro to this was just getting depressing. And I am talking about the fact that I am dealing with legitimate depression right now, but people don't want to hear that. And this is not about that. And in this, I was using it as an excuse for why I'm making so many less videos. But when I stop and think about it, how often do I actually notice when people stop making as many videos? Almost never. There are definitely creators that if they went weeks without making videos, I would notice. But if they miss one or two here or there, I just assume they're busy and I don't think about it at all. So I have to assume that nobody is waiting with bated breath for my upload schedule, which I don't even have a schedule. So I don't know why I decided to go off on a tangent and explain myself. I think it was more because I just feel guilty that I have a bunch of ideas and I'm not doing them. I'm not making the videos. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to. And I don't need an excuse. I think it's kind of irrelevant. It's just life happens. So for whatever reason, yeah, like a lot of people, I'm making less videos this summer. And ultimately, I wanted to end it on a positive note because I feel positively about this palette. I still have several more looks that I want to try. Like I wanted to try combining these two. I think this like light pale minty color is so weird. It's such a weird color that combining it with random things, some of them could turn out pretty or not. We'll see. But I don't have a lot of shades like this in my collection, and I certainly don't have a lot of shades like this in my collection. So it's unique, and I appreciate that. And I think this is a fun palette. Do I think everybody needs it? No, I definitely don't. I think if you don't have the extra money to spend on this right now, I don't believe that this is going to ever be one of my most used. So in that sense, I don't think it's a must have. But if you're in a rut with makeup in any way, I think palettes like this are fun for the art of it all. Otherwise you could get singles and do the same thing and get colors that are safer, colors that that you like and you'll use. Not that any of us ever need any of these items, but I just think some things make more sense for longevity purposes. I don't think this is something that I'm going to get the most use out of, but it's already definitely in the middle, solid middle. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but I like it and I'm having fun. So yeah, I wanted to come on here and sort of have a redo of my send off. And I also wanted to mention the organization that I'm going to be linking in the description box. Maybe I'll put it in bold places. Maybe I'll do a pinned comment. It has a link, so I don't know if I can put that in the comment, but regardless, it'll definitely be in the description box. Every video that I make this month, I'm going to pick one charity to highlight. So right now I'm going to highlight the G.L.I.T.S. It's an organization that helps trans people primarily, but all people from the LGBTQIA plus community based in New York City. And it's an organization that I have been involved with, virtually. I'm not in New York City, but in the past. So I know that they're trustworthy and they're a good organization. I know in 2025, it's difficult sometimes to know who you're giving your money to. So I'm always really cautious. That's why on June 1st, every June 1st, I donate to the Trevor Project because I'm so grateful that they exist and I don't have to think about it. I can just donate and I know that they're a good charity. I don't have to look into them. When it comes to other organizations, I do feel like I need to do a little bit more due diligence and vet them. So what I've decided to do is everybody knows about the Trevor Project, but some of these smaller organizations that I feel like need a little bit more love, I'm trying to look into them and share them. So that's the one that I'm going to share this week. I already have one for next week or my next video. And I always have, every June, I go out of my way on Instagram to look for businesses to promote. So LGBTQIA plus owned businesses and organizations to donate to. So whatever I come across, I put links in my stories, and then on my profile, I have the highlights, lingo, I don't know, the little circle with the highlights that are permanent. I always put them there as well. So I did want to take a moment and talk about that because it's important every year. It's always important. But this year, I feel like especially the trans community is really under attack. So I know that's a lot of times we don't know what to do. And myself, I feel like I'm going to do it wrong. And I've just come to the point in my life where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it wrong sometimes. But there are things that I know that it's better to get it wrong sometimes than let anybody be confused about where I stand. So that's how I feel about that. And that's what I'm personally doing. That's where I'm starting. And I wanted to share, and I wanted to definitely wish everybody a very happy Pride Month and extend my love and support in any way that I can. So now I'm going to cut back to the video, but just popping in to, I don't know, bring a little levity to this otherwise very dull outro situation. I'm so grateful for this community and having makeup as my creative outlet. It's definitely something that I feel like has helped me a lot. I wanted to wish everybody a happy Pride. I hope that you're taking care of yourself and having a beautiful day or night wherever you are. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.